everyone, today I was in the mood to talk about reading, so I thought I would tell you about all of the books that I've read over the last few weeks. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think, and these are the books that I've read since the last time that I made one of these. In fact, the first book that I'm going to tell you about, which is My Penguin Year by Lindsay Mcrae, the subtitle is Living with the Emperors, A Journey of Discovery. I glossed over this in my favourite books of 2022. In the end of that video, I don't think I said the title, but I said, I'm reading a book at the moment and I don't think this will be a 5-star read, so I'm safe to make this video because I'm going to tell you about all of my 5-star reads, and my current read will not be one of them, and that'll be the last book I finished this year. And it was a 5-star read, so there we go, that'll teach me. I picked this book up in a charity shop because I love a natural history book, but also penguins are my eldest's favourite, and it's been known for me to read a natural history type book and then for him to want to read it afterwards. He didn't want to, which is absolutely fine, but if he had of, it meant that I could check whether it was appropriate for a 12-year-old before he read it. But yeah, it's fine that he didn't want to because I really enjoyed it. So this isn't the first book that I've read by a videographer or photographer. I find it really fascinating reading accounts of how they get those shots. In fact, when I was at uni, I went to a talk by a wildlife videographer, and I can't remember who it was, but I was just captivated by the way they can kind of get the natural behaviours and how difficult it is, and just find it really interesting. And what I hadn't thought about were two things. A few things, but to get shots of penguins, of emperor penguins, I don't know why that was hard to say. First of all, because of the difficulties of travelling to the Antarctic, it meant that Lindsay Mcrae and some of the other people that he worked with had to be there for like a whole year, I think it was, he went for, even though the actual filming period of time was not all of that period, because he had to travel there while the weather was good enough to get there, and then, you know, travel back at the same time the next year. So he had to commit to this long period of time, even though not all of that would be filming. Also, the extreme conditions he was filming in, I mean, he really captures the Antarctic storms. It's amazing. But what I really hadn't thought about is that a lot of that time it's dark. It's during the time when it is always dark, and he has to try and film. And he talked about having, you know, being able to get the shots at a higher quality now because the cameras are able to do more with the tiny glimmer of light that they might have at certain periods, so that they can, you know, just capitalise on that. And it was just fascinating. I hadn't thought about, when you see the footage, that it was filmed in the dark, because it doesn't look like it. It's beautiful. It's got, you know, tragic moments and lovely moments, and it's interwoven with what's going on in Lindsay's life at the time. There's photographs, and some of them are of the penguins. Let's find a nice one. Look, there's all sorts of creatures. It was a lovely book. I really enjoyed it. If you like penguins or you like kind of wildlife videography, this was a 5-star read for me. So that then takes me into 2023, and the first book I read was this one, Audio for Authors, Audiobooks, Podcasting and Voice Technologies by Joanna, Penn. By the way, if you haven't seen one of my wrap-ups recently, I'm not doing them monthly anymore. I just do them when I want to, because with the pressure. Anyway, so this book is a fairly recent release, I think, by Joanna Penn. Let's have a look. 2020. And so you may or may not know, I have a podcast which I've had for, I don't know, 10 months or something, and although I'm resting it at the moment due to life, I will bring it back. And so podcasting is something I love. I listen to podcasts all the time. I'm really interested in audio in that context. If you've watched this channel for a while, in fact, last week I made a video which was my vlog of being in a studio recording audio. So I have for a long time been trying to put my books into an audio format. I have done that for Lily the Limpet Gets Lost, but I've struggled for longer books because, well, to be honest, Lily wasn't easy, but trying to get a good enough quality audio in my house is not very easy. So I eventually decided to get a much cleaner first recording to reduce the editing time, and that's why I went to the studio. Thinking ahead to that, because I had that session booked, I thought, well, yes, I've had a podcast. Yes, I've listened to lots of podcasts. Yes, I've listened to lots of audiobooks. And yes, I've recorded an audiobook before and other bits of audio. I've sometimes done narration bits on these videos, and I've recorded music that I've done when I've hit milestones and stuff. So I've done it before, but, you know, let's maximise when I'm paying for studio time. Let's just make sure that I am as prepared as possible. And yeah, I just thought it would be good to read up about it beforehand. I'd heard Joanna Penn on her podcast talking about this book. She talks about audio as a format a lot, so I was sold. So I picked this book up, and it's interesting. There were definitely some points in there that were useful. I think the thing was that I was looking for more technical, this is how you do this. And I know some of that stuff. I think maybe the stuff I knew was in here. There wasn't much that was new to me, but it's not a very technical book. It's more about mindset and about kind of how to think about audio as a format, how important it is, why you might want to do it. It's more that than here's how to do it. And I was looking for things like tips on self-narration. There are a few, but I would have liked more, and I picked up what she'd put in there and put that into practice. Also, I was interested in sort of how to mark up a manuscript for audio, and again there was a little bit, but I would have liked more of her experience of how she's done it. And, you know, for instance, in the book that I recorded recently, there were things like bullet pointed lists or short sections, and I had to think about how I was going to read those. And I think just some ideas of how you could do that and how maybe she'd done it and different options, I would have liked to have seen that as well. So there were a few useful little bits in it, but overall, because it was a mindset book, and I'm won over, I love audio, it wasn't really what I was looking for. So it's still good, but it didn't quite fit what I had hoped from it. But if you're thinking about getting into audio, whether it's podcasting, audiobooks, whatever you want to do, I think that this is a good start for thinking about it and sort of ideas and mindset. So yeah, it was okay. It wasn't quite what I wanted. Next I read, right, this one I don't have, so I'll put a picture somewhere. And this was Doorways to the Sea so it's an anthology by Right by the Sea. That's who it's by. I wondered if it was here, but I can't see it. Anyway, this is an anthology by a local writing group, and one of the members of the writing group gave the book to me, which is why I'm very confused as to where it is. But anyway, a lady called Carol Grimes, who's written a book called The Singer's Tale. I haven't read it, but shout out to her. She's a lovely lady, and she gave me the copy of the anthology because her story in it is about mermaids, and she knows that I like mermaids, and we were talking about it at an event and she said, oh, here, have it. So really lovely of her, thank you, Carol. And I finally got around to reading it. Her story was great. It was nice to see stories by lots of the people that I spend time with at author events. So I'm not part of Right by the Sea, which is based in Folkestone. I'm not part of the writing group, but I know lots of the writers in the group, and when I do authors events in Hythe, that's that group, and so I hang out with them. I know lots of them, but I'm not actually part of the writing group. So seeing some of their work was really lovely. A standout one for me was the first story in the book, and because I haven't got it here, I can't remember what it was, but I really enjoyed it. I actually read it out in the car to my family as we were driving somewhere, and we all really liked it. So as always, in an anthology, there's a mixture of stuff, and some things I like and some things I don't, but I really enjoyed it. It's nice to read an anthology, lots of different styles, and they were all inspired by beach huts, I think. So that was sort of the theme, and was taken in lots of different ways. So very enjoyable. And then that leads to the next one I read, which I do have, which is Out of Cinque by many of the same authors. It's not actually officially authored by Right by the Sea, but a lot of the same authors have contributed stories to this anthology, because the reason this was put together is that in Hythe, where we have these author events, there's a patch of land called Prince's Parade, and Prince's Parade is kind of between the river and the sea, sorry, the canal and the sea. And there are plans, which sadly seem to have gone through and can't be stopped, to develop that strip of land, which will break up the kind of ability for wildlife to move between it. At present, it's like scrubland that's, you know, a brilliant haven for wildlife. It also interrupts being able to see up into the hills. It's, you know, it's really lovely, and it's going to be developed. You can read more, I'll link below, you can read more about it, but basically this group of people who decided to put together the anthology have been campaigning to stop the development, and I think that's reached the end of the road, as far as I'm aware, which is very sad. But that was the purpose of the anthology. So Hythe is a Cinque port, so hence Out of Cinque. So there's a lot of environmental themes in here, and I contributed a story to this called Grounding, where a character has, but she's not named, it's first person, she is having an anxiety attack and she is grounding herself, and she is stood in Hythe looking at the sea and the canal and the surrounding area, and sort of reflecting on her environment in the context of feeling very anxious. So yeah, my story is in there, so I had to pick up a copy because I've got a little bit of writing in there. Also, again, lots of my lovely friends who have contributed. Standout piece for me, my friend Jo Bavington-Jones, and her partner Dirk, is it Seafried? I think that's his surname. Jo's piece is inspired by me and her sitting at writer events. So if you read her piece, I'm referred to as Boob Lady, which will be no surprise to people who know me. And yeah, to our kind of silly conversations when we're sat at author events together. And then Dirk's is the next story, and it's a totally different style, but it's part of the same story. And I really, really enjoyed theirs. There's lots of great stuff. Again, you know, it's a mixture, poetry and different styles and all sorts. I really enjoyed it, and I was really pleased to be part of this, and it raised money for, I'm trying to remember, I might have to put this on the screen or below. There were two charities. Does it say in the foreword? No, I don't think so. But it did raise a whole load of money for charity. I'll put it up. So lovely to be involved in, and you can still pick this one up. Proceeds still go to charity. So if you're interested, there's that one. And the people who put it together are Mark Brophy, who's written a book about Prince's Parade that I can't remember what it's called, and Debbie Jones, who is also a lovely local writer and does lots of stuff for the local author community. I'll link some of their books and things below. Right, so I read those two anthologies, and then I read this one. Sorry, you got sounds of my chair as I'm moving around. You Must Be Layla by Yassmin Abdel-Magied. I think that's how you pronounce her surname. And this is my daughter's, and I feel like she got this for Christmas or a birthday. Her birthday's 2 days before Christmas, so it's easy to not know. Yeah, can't remember. Anyway, this was just the next one we picked up to have as a bedtime story, so we've been reading this for a couple of months. And this book had lots of positives for me. First of all, the main character, Layla, is a Muslim, so are her family, and she starts off going to an international school with lots of different students from lots of different places, and then she gets a scholarship to a private school, which is far more kind of white, middle-class Australian. It's set in Australia. And she is then navigating kind of this different school culture, coming up against bullying and racism, trying to find where she belongs, not really feeling like she fits in. She wants to go to the school because she wants to be able to sort of access the science and technology side of things at the school. And then when she gets there, it's just like she doesn't really feel like she fits in. And so I really enjoyed the perspective of sort of examining the culture, talking about racism, talking about bullying, and being able to read about and talk about those topics with my daughter is really important. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. It's got at the back, there is some of the Arabic phrases. So where some Arabic phrases and words are used, you can look up in the back and check what they mean in English. So that's really helpful. Some of them I already knew because when I was growing up, my dad lived in Saudi Arabia, and so I already know some Arabic phrases from then. But yeah, I personally, I really enjoy reading stories with Arabic characters or Muslim characters or, you know, sort of culture, and that I really enjoy that. Anyway, also there is a really strong focus in this book on STEM. That Layla enters a robotics competition. That's a huge part of the plot. And so having the talk of engineering and physics and maths and all that, I'm a science teacher. I love that stuff. So really enjoyed all of that. All I would say is that there are some parts of it that are quite repetitive or feel like sort of explained over and over. I appreciate it's for a younger audience, and so that's helpful, but it felt at times like a little bit too much. Yeah. That's the only downside. It was good. My daughter really enjoyed it. So yeah, a really good bedtime story. She's 10. She really liked that. It was a good one. The next book I read was this one, How to Kill Your Family. So my best friend Laura, she bought me this because of the title. It has been funny when I've been at family things and I'm reading it and they're like, ah. I started this just before I went to hospital, then had it in hospital, but I couldn't focus on anything. There is a section of it that I read while I was in hospital, and it's very shaky what the plot is on those bits. Probably should have gone back. Yeah, anyway, this is about a character called Grace, who, when you meet her, she's plotting or maybe even is already partaking in, is that the right word? The murder of a member of her family. And it becomes clear she is in prison, so she sort of alternates between the murder of various people in her family and then her perspective from prison. She's writing the book in prison. It's fiction. And it's sort of the plot uncovers of why she is suddenly killing her family off, and you learn about the different relationships in the family, and then about, you know, her being in prison. It's darkly humorous, and it's good fun. I found the end. So a lot of the end is fine, it makes sense, and you know, the sort of twists and turns, and I'm like, yeah, okay, even though part of it is a bit hazy from the morphine and not being able to concentrate, I mostly was like, yeah, got this, cool, yeah, great, yeah, good fun, good ideas. And then there is literally a bit right at the end where I went, huh? And I had to Google it, and loads of other people had gone, yeah, I didn't get that last bit. Luckily for the internet, I could look it up and go, oh, okay, right, get it. So there was that. I think as well there are bits that are a bit stereotypical. I guess that's kind of the point, is she's, you know, making the sort of the characters, the way she's writing about the people that she is murdering, obviously when I say she, fictionally, because it's, yeah, and she is like making the characters larger than life and, you know, really kind of trying to make you not like these characters. So I get that, but I think sometimes the stereotypes I was a bit like, I don't know. But yeah, in general, witty, dark, just, you know, light. You wouldn't think that, but it is. So yeah, good fun. An interesting idea for like a comedy book, because it was very dark. Then the last book I've got in my pile was this one, Girl Code, Unlocking Secrets to Success, Sanity and Happiness for the Female Entrepreneur by Cara Alwill-Leyba. I have read one of her other books, which I wish I could remember what it was called. I'll put it on the screen, can't remember, which I quite enjoyed. This one she references in that book, and so I thought, I'm gonna have a look at this one and just see how it is and if I get anything from it. And for me, this was not the one. The other one I enjoyed, this one I really didn't. It's not for me. It's a lot about confidence and, you know, as a business person, as an entrepreneur, just believing in yourself, investing in yourself, putting yourself out there and all of that. So it's a lot of mindset stuff, which is great if that's what you're looking for. It wasn't really. I don't know what I was looking for. I think maybe just, I don't know. Anyway, it has little interviews with other business people in it, which is great. But I think for me, so I follow Cara Alwill-Leyba on, I think it's Leyba on social media, and her Instagram is the Champagne Diet, and I know she's all about that kind of champagne glamorous life, but for me it was a bit too much of like, put on your heels and grab your glass of bubbly and da-da-da, a bit too like live, laugh, love, or too like you know, like, I really hate the narratives on social media of like, oh, well, I'm going to need a glass of wine after this. Like the glamorization of alcohol. That's not to say that I don't have a glass of wine after a long day. But I think it's like the sort of stereotypical narrative, if that makes sense. And all of the, you know, I don't think that being a woman is all about high heels and nails and makeup and, you know, I just... I can, a certain point of it I'm fine with, and I know it's light-hearted and I get what she's getting at with it, but for me there was too much in this book and I was just like, yeah, that's not really me. So yeah, I think it was that, and I think a lot of the like inspirational and like, yeah, and it's quite short. There's a lot of like, here's a page for you to write what you've learned from this chapter, and just, yeah, it was not for me. And I know that some people really, really rate it and have got a lot from it, and I did not. I think the only thing I got from this book, and funnily enough, I had got this from the other book of hers that I'd read, is about collaboration and kind of helping other people rise up rather than jealousy or, you know. So in this book, the example she gives is somebody else who starts using her branding, and instead of being really angry and bitter and, you know, all the negativity, she reaches out to the other person, she supports them, it's all very positive, and they sort of move on from it. In the other book, there was an example of her talking about going into a shop and wanting to take photographs in the shop because it was so beautiful, and the owner of the shop saying, no, you know, I don't want you stealing my ideas. And she's like, oh, I think that was the context, and she's like, well, I'm not going to, I just want to share it, and if I do use some of your ideas, it's because they're so good and I'm not going to copy it, and nah, and sort of saying, actually, if we work together, we all make each other better, and if we're sort of kind and positive and not jealous and pitted against each other. And for me, I feel like that bears repeating, you know, and just thinking about, because we all get those situations. I had one fairly recently, actually, where something happened that I felt really angry about, and I had to step away from it and look at it and go, actually, it doesn't matter, and it's all fine. And yes, of course, there are going to be occasions where you might have to take someone to court or, you know, I don't know, speak to somebody about a situation. However, I think that you can approach things with positivity, and that's not necessarily everybody's natural state. It isn't mine. So I think reading it and going, actually, yeah, working together, helping each other, sharing ideas, being collaborative, being a community, and not being necessarily offended and jealous, and, you know, somebody else's success doesn't have a bearing on yours, and you can work together, and all that stuff I think is great. So I did take that. It was nice to have another kind of, yeah, let's all work together on this. So I enjoyed that. But aside from that, I think the style was not for me, and I didn't read it and think, yes, let's go do this. I read it and kind of went, nah. So I think if it's what you're looking for, you would find it quite inspiring, but it wasn't for me. And I enjoyed her other book more, whatever it was. At some point I will have put it on the screen. So yeah, a mixed bag as always. Let me know if you've read any of these, or if, based on what I've said about these books, if you have a recommendation for me. At the moment, I am particularly interested in stuff to do with writing, publishing, business. So although I am reading some fiction and also non-fiction associated to my areas of interest, I am particularly looking at business type books. So if you are an author and you've read something really great, let me know in the comments. I would love to know. Anyway, please hit like if you enjoyed this, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. Take care.